Welcome to Editors Forum. This week, the two major political parties, the NPP and the NDC, have been at each other's throat with what they claim is the true state of the country's economy. It all started with the EMT town hall meeting where Vice President Dr. Bawumia blamed recent depreciation of the Ghana cedi on currency speculators who took advantage of Ghana's exit from the IMF, adding the NPP had better economic managers.
On the annual rate of depreciation of the cedi in recent years shows that the worst performance so far under the NPP government is better than the best performance under the previous government between 2012 and 2016.
But the opposition NDC claims that several figures and indicators churned out by the Vice President are untruths.
Management of an economy is a very serious business and cannot be reduced to comic relief and inciting the public against expectations that cannot be met. Excellency, the Vice President made a number of profound statements that were not supported by facts.
You recall in the lead-up to the 2016 elections, Dr. Bawumia linked the poor performance of the Ghana cedi with what he described as weak fundamentals of the economy. The Vice President reiterated that fundamentals analogy, this time with an explanation.
I stated in 2014 that if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. But it is warped logic to jump from that to a conclusion that if there is depreciation in your currency, then the fundamentals must be weak.
Well, a number of measures to significantly ease the burden on importers and make Ghana's ports more competitive in the sub-region were also announced.
Benchmark delivery values of imports will be reduced by 50%. However, for vehicles, the reduction will be 30%.
But the NDC is casting doubts, claiming it will be similar to the announced reduction in tariffs on spare parts.
He created the impression that from today, if you were to go to the port, what is going to happen to you is that the goods that you used to clear yesterday, you are going to get a 50% rebate. And then if you are to clear a vehicle, what you used to pay yesterday, you are to get approximately 30% rebate. In other words, that is not true. Unfortunately, I only wish to caution Ghanaians that please don't celebrate as yet, because another Abosokai is on the way.
The Association of Ghana Industries, however, cautions the public not to be overly excited about the reduction in benchmark value, explaining it is not equal to a reduction in duties.
Now, the benchmark value only comes in when there is no clarity and there is uncertainty about the values you are declaring. So if you are declaring a certain value and it's consistent with what the customs expect, then they leave it there and you pay the appropriate duty. So it's not a reduction in duty. It is only when your declaration is not consistent with what the customs have. And then they say that you are going to use a certain benchmark. So that benchmark, your values cannot be below that. As far as you are concerned, if people are really declaring the right values, it has no effect.
Also, Energy Minister John Peter Amewu has been explaining why the country will not go back to Dumso.
But we are never back to the era where we have consistent, persistent shortfall in supply. We are in an era that there is installed capacity available, but what we need to do is to change that installed capacity to availability.
But former Deputy Power Minister John Jinapor, on his part, describes as poor the management of the energy sector by the Akufo-Addo-led government.
So you are sleeping on the job, you are snoring on the job, you fail to pursue President Mahama's programs, and today when you are supposed to pay $32 million every month because of your inertia and incompetence, you turn around and blame President Mahama.
We have all the analysis on Editors Forum. We are live on digital address GA0992539, on Facebook.com/JoyNews on TV, on Twitter at JoyNews on TV, and YouTube, and across the world on myjoyonline.com. You can also join the conversation via 0266047417 on WhatsApp. My guest in the studio, Toma Amihir, is editor, Gold Street Business newspaper, and Kojo Yang Singh is anchor with JoyNews. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Very sad moment in our country to see that everything else is being politicized, and the people who are supposed to be managing our economy are also now playing politics with our economy. I'm sure you're sad about the situation.
I've been complaining for quite some time, Aisha, that it just shows how self-serving the political class in this country are. It is really disappointing. I think, you see, you can't change the political class. They will be self-serving. They come to power mainly concerned about their self-interest. So it's time for the electorate to wake up and demand more. You see, when you have a situation where the electorate is driven almost entirely by emotions, they are very fixated in the support for this party or that party, it gives the politicians a chance to get away with anything.
Yeah.
We need a situation where the electorate are more enlightened and now say that, look, do the right thing or we'll stop supporting you. Then the politicians will be forced to do the right thing. But where politicians are in a situation where 40% of the electorate are going to vote for our party no matter what we do or fail to do.
Somebody says even if you put a slippers as a candidate, they will vote for the person because of the love for the party.
That's it. 40%, whatever we do, these guys are not going to vote for us. So at stake really is the 20% floating vote system. That's the only thing at stake in the elections. So it gives the politicians the chance to do whatever they want to do.
And I've also heard somebody say that maybe in the on the ballot paper we should include none of the above. So we have all the political candidates, and then we have none of the above. And when we go for elections and none of the above wins, then maybe we'll send a signal to the people. I'm sure you're also not happy about that situation.
Of course I'm not. This is the job we do, and we are exposed to this sort of gerrymandering between the two political parties. We're exposed to it on every issue. Every issue. Somebody gets robbed and it's a political issue. Somebody is sick, it's a political issue. The economy, the one thing which we ought to be able to rely on figures to know what is happening, even that is politicized. And you saw both parties do it last week. It's so sad. So you saw the NPP government do this presentation where the purpose, the whole point is not really to tell us where our economy is so that businessmen can plan, businesswomen can plan, so that Ghanaians will know how 2019 is going to go for them, 2020 and beyond. No, it wasn't for us. It was a conversation between the two political parties, and we were just innocent bystanders.
Yeah.
So from the very beginning, you could hear every time he makes a point, the vice president makes a point, he then ceased to make a jab at the opposition, as if they were the only people in his audience.
Yeah.
I've got to say that was sad. So that even whatever was good in the presentation got lost in the back and forth. So you had the NPP picking figures that make them look good, and then when it comes to talking about the previous government, they pick figures that make them look bad, just so that when you compare the two, one of them is winning. But to be perfectly honest, if you come and tell me as a citizen who has voted for you and is paying tax, to pay your salaries and giving you the mandate to use our taxes for our benefit, if you come and tell me that, oh, you know what, I'm failing, but your predecessor failed worse than me, how am I supposed to take comfort from that? So
that should be the yardstick.
It cannot be the yardstick. And then the opposition came, and to be honest, they didn't make me sad, they made me angry. They came with all manner of counters, and again, speaking to the audience of their opponents, all manner of back and forth and quips and nicknames and jokes and calling each other, and at the end of it, nothing. At the end of it, nothing to tell me that if I have a vote in 2020, I should give it to you. In the first place, you have failed us. You have failed us already. For which reason we voted you out. Someone else has come.
Government is supposed to be like continuous projects, and the fact that these two major political parties have led us, for so many years, it's been the NPP or the NDC, and for each of them to make, each of them look bad in the eyes of the public. I think that no matter what, these politicians or these governments have had something, at least something good that we can all talk about. How do you feel? The last time I spoke with, in fact, it was actually Evans Mensah speaking with Amewu, and he asked him, won't you give the NDC any credit for what they left for you to continue in terms of our energy sector? He says, I ain't giving them any credit. Okay, so, and I've heard political parties or political analysts say that, this is problematic, that each of the parties is making the other one look bad in the eyes of the public. What's your appreciation of this development?
Well, for that I blame Ghanaians. It's our fault. That's what we want. That's what we want.
How?
You know, when Ghanaians want a binary system where you hit puberty and then you are assigned a political party, and then from that date to the day you die, that is the party you support, no matter what they do, whether it's good, bad, ugly, you support them. If they come to your house and arrest your mother, you support them.
Sometimes you talk to them and they tell you behind the scenes that, listen, this one is bad, but you can't talk about it because you're a party member.
And that is what we want. That's what the people of Ghana want.
Well,
that's
maybe
the reason
not
why
all
politicians,
of us. Not all of us.
Well, let's be fair. The elections prove that at any given time, the majority of us wants that. That's why our elections go this way. That's why no matter what, it's these same two parties we choose from. That's why nobody is willing to give a vote to somebody who is yet to rob us. You know, that it's because clearly when they do that to each other, we love it.
Actually, there's something, let's look at just how selfish the politicians are being, what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, this is an economy that relies, well, unfortunately, but it's unfortunate, it's the fact. Our economy is far from being beyond aid. We rely heavily on international investment community, development assistance communities. Now, here you have a situation where when MPP is in power, basically what the message they are sending to us and everybody around the world is that, hey, look, the other guys cannot manage the economy. When MPP is in power, when NDC is in power, they send the same message about MPP.
Yeah.
Now, if the international investment community decides to listen to what our leaders are saying, what it means is that me as a foreign investor, I will not invest in Ghana beyond the next election, because I've been told by the government in power, who is supposed to be looking after my investment, that the other guys are incompetent.
Yeah.
That if my investment stays here and the other guys are in power, my investment might go south.
Yep.
Right? And of course, the investment community knows that that Ghana regularly changes governments, quite regularly changes government. And one of the results, one of the effects of that showed up in the energy levy bonds.
Yeah.
The one they did some couple of weeks. If you notice that the shorter tenor, I can't remember the exact tenors of the two types of bond. There were two tenors. And the shorter one was such that there was a very strong possibility the incumbent government would still be in power at the time those bonds would mature. Based on an 8-year cycle of changing of government. I think there was one that was about 6 or 7 years or something that it was going to mature. It's going to mature before the end of the 8-year cycle that Ghana has become used to.
Okay.
And that one was seriously oversubscribed. And the other one has a tenor whereby it was clearly going to, it would mature after the 8-year cycle had expired. So if you follow how the First Republic has gone so far, there's a very strong possibility that the incumbent government will not be in power by the time the next guy is coming. And what happens? Seriously undersubscribed. You know, and a lot of people now say that, look, what the investors have simply done is to say, okay, look, because of the way we have politicized even our public debts, bond issuances, and there's the possibility that another government comes into power and they won't respect the terms of these bonds, which were very, very controversial between the two parties. So people were like, well, we'll invest in the ones which will be paid, which have to be paid off by the incumbent government, but we will not invest in the one which will mature at the time that it's very likely that the people in opposition now who have been opposing those bonds will be in power.
Right.
Because they might politicize even the repayment. They might just declare that, look, this is not our problem, it's not our priority.
It's interesting, but what brought about all this back and forth is the economic management team town hall meeting. Let's take excerpts of what the vice president said at that meeting.
GDP growth remained robust in 2018, almost double the average in sub-Saharan Africa. The total public debt has increased from 122 billion in 2016 to 173 billion, including the cost of the banking sector cleanup at the end of 2018. However, the strong fiscal adjustment and better debt management has meant that the rate of debt accumulation, which is at 12%, excluding the banking sector cleanup, the rate of debt accumulation is at its lowest in the last decade. Inflation has dropped steadily from the high of 15.4% at the end of 2016 to 9% at the end of January 2019. This is the lowest we have seen in the last 6 years. In 2014, the exchange rate depreciated by 31.3%. The fiscal deficit was 10.1% of GDP. The public debt rose to 70.2% of GDP. Inflation rose to 17%, and GDP growth had declined from 7.3% to 4%. In other words, the economic fundamentals had weakened significantly, and therefore the depreciation was easily explainable. The data on the annual rate of depreciation of the cedi in recent years shows that the worst performance so far under the MPP government, the 8.4% depreciation that we saw in 2018, that worst performance is better than the best performance under the previous government between 2012 and 2016. So our worst is better than your best. And then you say boot for boot. This one is more like boot for Chalewote.
So that was Vice President Dr. Bawumia explaining how the economy is performing. For me, he says the NPP are better managers of the economy than the NDC. But Toma, what's the reality with regards to the continuous depreciation of the cedi against the major trading currency? And I need you to juxtapose that with what the Vice President has been saying so that we can make a valid conclusion.
Okay. The primary cause of the most recent first of all, let's get something clearly, okay? The most recent bout of depreciation of the cedi was for a fundamentally different reason from what happened in 2014 and 2015.
Okay.
Then we had a problem of we simply were not generating enough foreign exchange from our exports compared against our import bills. Fortunately, that has changed. Now we regularly, since the last quarter of 2016, Ghana has been producing a trade surplus. Where the problem is this. Since and before we go any further, let me explain that when both parties were blaming each other last, and the fact is that every administration since the Kufuor administration is culpable for what has happened to the cedi over the past few months.
Definitely.
Let me explain why. We borrow, okay, regularly. We have foreign debt and domestic debt. Now, when we borrow externally, you do Eurobonds, everybody takes note that we are taking money from abroad and it's going to give us a liability. But you see, regularly, every week, we also borrow what we call domestic debt.
Okay.
Those are cedi-denominated bonds, which are issued every week.
Okay.
The problem is that for bonds with tenors of 2 years up to right now, we've gone as far as 15 years. What we call domestic debt, actually what happens is that most of those bonds are bought by foreigners who bring in dollars, change into cedis, and buy cedi-denominated bonds. The problem is that when they want to exit their investment, they now change their cedis back into dollars. So effectively, these are foreign debts that we are calling domestic debt. We are deceiving ourselves and calling them domestic debts. Now, what happened here was this. I hope I have time to explain this.
Please do. You have the time.
Now, remember at the end of the previous decade, there was a global financial crisis which resulted in economic recession.
Yeah.
Now, what happened was that, led by America, the Western Hemisphere countries now reduced their interest rates almost to zero in a bid to get liquidity into the economy so that the recession would not last long.
Yeah.
We were trying to generate economic activity by making easy money available.
Sure.
Okay. Now, it was during that period that African countries, including Ghana, saw the opportunity and started issuing Eurobonds, which we started in 2007.
Yeah.
All right. Because a lot of investors were like, hey, we've been buying US Treasury bonds since. Right now, these are offering less than 1% per annum interest. And here come African countries who are ready to offer 7-8%. So the people, that's how countries like Ghana have been able to borrow from foreigners or international market and actually get foreign investors to come and change their money to CDs and invest in CD bonds. As long as they know that when they are exiting, they can change their money back to dollars.
Yeah.
So all was good. So from 2007 until sometime last year, we had a net inflow of dollars. Investors were bringing in more dollars they were taking out. But remember that you're paying interest on the money you're taking. So for you to continuously having a net inflow, that is more money coming in and going out, what it means is that the volume of money you are taking abroad has to keep rising.
Yes.
It has to rise faster than the interest rate,
Yep.
which is what Ghana has been doing for the past 12 years.
Okay.
Okay, so effectively we're borrowing dollars to spend and telling ourselves that we're okay.
Okay. Sure.
Now, because the economic recession has receded, the Federal Reserve Bank, that's the Central Bank of America, started increasing its interest rates. Okay. So now they start increasing interest. Gradually, as the rates go up, then foreign investors say that, oh, look, one, interest rates and dollar-denominated investments are going up. So we don't need these African countries like Ghana again.
Okay.
Two, the dollar has strengthened. You know, the strength of the dollar relative to other currencies also is strengthening, which is another incentive for people to go into, to have their investment in dollars rather than CD. Okay? So now for the first time since we started doing this in 2007, we started having a net outflow of these investments. More, we were having to pay off investors. Don't forget, these things can be traded on the secondary market.
Yep.
Now we started having an outflow of people taking their money out rather than bringing the money in. That is that's the major thing that now puts pressure on the CD. Despite the fact that we ourselves as a country are generating more dollars than we spend, we have a situation where all these dollars we have been borrowing for the past 12 years have been feeling very cool with ourselves. Now the money was going out.
Okay.
And I mean,
here we are.
The foreign exchange market, the other market is demand and supply.
Yeah.
So now the demand for dollars by people exiting their CD investments was high. So the money was going out.
Okay.
All right. So really, you have to blame every government that has been issuing these bonds every week, virtually every week, for foreigners to buy. You know, because they exposed us to this problem.
This situation.
You know that the governor of the Bank of Ghana has been warning for the past more than a year that our exposure to foreign investors is very, very dangerous because the risks were going up. I mean, we saw this thing coming.
Yeah.
All right. And well, it has come. So now that is stage one. Okay. Now, the next step, and you know, the vice president talked about speculators. Now, step two in the process is this. When your CD, because people are taking out their money, the CD now depreciates to a certain level where investors now just simply do the math.
Yeah.
Let's assume that over the space of 2 months, the CD has depreciated by, say, 5% in 2 months.
Right.
They now do the math and say, okay, 2 months, 5%. That means if you annualize it, that is at that rate of depreciation, in a year, the cedi will depreciate by 30%.
Okay.
And now sit back and say,
so they themselves do the calculation.
Yeah, they do the calculations. Okay, at this rate of depreciation, that means that over the year it's 30%. Now, what portfolio investment can you have in Ghana? They'll give you 30% returns. The highest, even the longest tenured bonds in Ghana are about 21-22%. So guys now sit back and say, okay, what I need to do now for me to maximize my profits, I take my money out of bonds. This is, I'm living to our Ghanaians now who do all their business in cities, not foreign investors. Okay. Take my money out of bonds, buy dollars, put it under my pillow.
Okay, and wait
and
for...
go back and wait for this depreciation to continue. After 1 year, I sell, I get 30%. Okay. Unlike my colleagues who invested in bonds and they end with 21%. Okay. If you go and check the statistics from the Bank of Ghana, the most recent ones that came out, you will find that as of February, in the 12 months up to February 2008, all right, the volume also the value of money held in foreign exchange accounts in Ghana contracted by 2%. In the 12 months up to February 2019, the volume of money in foreign exchange accounts in Ghana increased by 25%. You see the difference? Yeah. People are taking their money out of cities and putting in dollars.
Then, I mean, I
so
think
that's where the speculation
then I think the NDC will be right when it says what is going on per the second explanation that you gave, that this is actually a self-inflicted pain, the depreciation of the cedi, except that both of them are, you know, they are all liable to this kind of
Very much so. Very much so. What I don't like about what the NDC is saying is that they've been as guilty of it as anybody. Look, see, just check. Let's try and apportion blame here. Kufuor started it. Okay. NDC now comes in. And because they've now seen that this is a very nice way of getting dollars, because the foreign investors are bringing in their dollar and change to cedis. Yeah. When Kufuor came, when he started, he said nothing. The first time I said that it must be bonds of at least 5 years tenure. Then I think the Kufuor administration now reduced to 3 years. NDC now comes in because they need the dollars more. They now reduce the minimum tenure to 2 years. Okay. But recently they were actually debating whether they should reduce it to 1 year. Yeah. I think the IMF managed to convince the Bank of Ghana and the government that don't do it. You're already going too far. All right. So they've now reduced in other words, what they're saying is they're opening the door wider for such things. Right. And these are the things that kill us. So actually, it is self-inflicted. Yeah. But both parties have been guilty of opening the door for the pains to come in. Sure.
Let's listen to how the NDC put it.
The management of an economy is a very serious business and cannot be reduced to comic relief and inciting the public against expectations that cannot be met. Mr. Speaker, whilst the people of Ghana were jubilating yesterday, especially our brothers and sisters who are into imports and are into distributive trade, reminiscent of the days of the first budget of the MPP in 2017, when the people of Abosokan were celebrating the abolition of import duties. I said to myself, this is the second deceit that will hang the MPP forever in 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency the Vice President made a number of profound statements that were not supported by facts. And so even as the people of Ghana were contemplating whether it was the economy that we knew or that we have suddenly been transported to heaven, the international community began to give a verdict. And I'm sad to report and to give a word of caution to His Excellency the Vice President not to once again plunge this country into international disgrace. Yesterday, Bloomberg reported that hours after the Vice President made some of the claims that actually frightened them, the cedi reverted back to its unenviable record of being the worst performing currency in Africa. Your Excellency, Bloomberg reports that yesterday the cedi was trading at 5.61 at a time that the Vice President was in Ghana celebrating this abysmal performance and a disgrace to the international community, to us from the international community, because then we have once again gone back to be the worst performing currency in Africa. But this time, it was accompanied by us now becoming the 4th worst performing currency in the whole of the world.
Okay, so you had Adongo, MP for Bolga, explaining why he thinks that the vice president spewed palpable lies at the EMT town hall meeting. But could you haven't listened to the two parties? What's your judgment as a Ghanaian? I know you're not an economist, but at least in simple terms, you will understand
I am even in a
where
position,
your economy is right now.
It's such a pity that I'm even in a position where I'm forced to decide between these two who is telling me the truth. I think the question should be really who told more lies.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the only thing. And what is the value of that analysis anyway? If I determine that one lied less than the other, how does that improve my situation?
And how does that correlate into
Indeed.
my pocket?
But one thing is clear. I mean, if they continue like this, then we are heading for a situation where in 2020, our choice as voters is between one that failed us and one that is failing us.
Yeah.
But anyway, just to get to a bit of specificity, and I know that Toma probably has even more to educate us on when it comes to the real reasons behind the cedi's depreciation. If you look at any graph describing the life of the cedi since it was birthed, whether you want to look at the Ghana cedi, which was the result of the redenomination under Kufuor, or you want to look at the actual original cedi, which came to life in the 60s.
Yeah.
Whichever graph you look at is going down.
It's going down.
In terms of its value.
Okay.
From one year to the next, it's going down. There's never been a time when it's gone up.
It's appreciated.
There may be some occasional moments when it stays steady, or a little blip
when
where
it
gains a bit of value. And
when they inject foreign currencies.
Apart from that, it's just a downward trajectory. So, and that is for all the reasons Toma has explained, and I'm sure he has even more reasons.
Yeah.
But there are also certain events that occur which cause the cedi's fall to accelerate.
Yeah.
And those events might differ from one
government to the other,
or even from one event to the other.
Okay.
So within the same year, there might be two separate things that will happen that will cause
the cedi
and
to
sometimes
fall.
Yes, sometimes the politicians refer to these as external factors and so forth.
Yeah.
But basically, those factors could differ from one event to the other. The most recent one, you heard the Vice President explain, and this is something that we have fact-checked, that it did indeed happen.
Yeah.
The IMF, at the beginning of this year, suddenly came up with these 7 preconditions for our exit.
Okay.
So it was no longer a matter of, in April, looking at how you've performed, you leave. They suddenly brought 7 specific preconditions. Okay. Now, I'm sure they had their reasons. Perhaps they wanted to be sure that there was going to be some fiscal discipline. But those preconditions included something that kind of tied the hands of the Bank of Ghana when it comes to how they normally manage our currency's value.
Yeah.
Our international reserves, something that they very often, rely on when it's time to, inject some money into the system. They were told by the IMF 2 things. 1, don't touch it. And 2, keep it at the levels they were at December last year. So not only can they not touch it, but they kind of have to go and add to it.
Yeah.
To bring it up, because at the beginning of every year, every economy has all of these pressures that come on it, so.
But could you please, it wasn't suddenly. Government has known since last year that the IMF had told them long ago that the last review they are doing before they exit, they are going to use December 31st figures.
Okay.
So the target set for December 31st.
It just came out of the blue.
Yes, exactly. That's why the politicians
so they could have planned. They could have planned towards
this thing. They knew that this was the condition.
You see, but you say they could have planned towards it. You can only plan when you have options.
Anyway,
so you ask yourself, what options did they have?
Yes.
They didn't have any options. So yes, they may have known about it from December, but they literally walked into this situation with no options.
I agree with you totally on that. That was where IMF was wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when the Vice President says, look, the IMF tied the hands of Bank of Ghana, that's what he's talking about, and it is true. It's the truth.
Right.
Okay, so that added extra pressure
on
to the city, which is why you saw it free falling, and there didn't appear to be anything that could be done about it. You heard the president say things like, "Oh, I'm not happy about the." He was really saying, "I'm not happy about these final preconditions we have to jump through." You know, so that's the reality. That is a fact. Something that should, you know, politics ought really not touch. And you will find that there have been other such incidents. Like last year, we had a similar period when the city was free falling, and it was again because of the increase in the interest rates of the by the US Treasury, and this affected more countries than just us. So yes, there are some of these situations, but the truth is, for reasons that Thomas has clarified, and I'm sure he will even add to, the city has just been doing this. In spite of those occasional, you know, pressures, the city has just been doing this. So there is a fundamental question. No party is winning when it comes to the management of our currency. No party is winning.
But the question, somebody just sent me a question that didn't the NPP know that when they said they had arrested the CD and given the key to the IGP? But Toma, I need you to I don't know how to marry the NDC's the vice president's explanation and what Mr. Adongo just said, and let's see what was the reality. And if you want to talk about one party making the other look bad, who's actually telling the truth, the NPP or the NDC?
If we're going to all the lies I've been told over the past 1 week, I mean, I didn't come with my maths. I can't say so I don't think you should go there. Basically, I mean, the simple one. Hours after the vice president made his speech, then the CD sharply fell. I mean, please, you just go on the internet and go and find out whether that happened. It didn't. I mean, a lot has been said about how the vice president actually lied, gave us wrong statistics. For example, the debt to GDP ratio. Those are also untruths that we've been told. You know, as I said before, unless the electorate wakes up, the politicians will continue to lie, especially when it comes to economics. You know, because they know that people don't really understand
and
issues.
they're technical.
Now, let me tell you one thing I really want to get off my chest. As Kojo was saying, there was an additional problem behind this continuous fall of the CD. And this one is not something that depends on interest rates in America. It's something we are just doing to ourselves. Okay, our borrowing. Okay, look. In a bottle, let me summarize Ghana's debt management policy in a nutshell. A government comes because it feels under pressure to deliver infrastructure and things like that for the next election, and now has access to the Eurobond market where you can borrow long term. You borrow something that you can't afford to pay today, use it to do your roads, everything, and now go to vote and say, look, I've delivered, vote for me at the next election. Knowing that the repayment will be somebody else's problem. Simple as that. Okay? Now, basically, the basic idea, and this is shared by both NDC and MPP, is that Ghana is discovering oil. There's a lot more oil that's going to be discovered. Before these debts will mature, I mean, we're taking debts 10 years, 15 years, before they will mature, the debts, the oil production will have been so good that oil money will be able to pay off this debt. That's basically, I know it might sound very silly, but that's what we are doing. That's the gamble that successive governments have been doing. You notice that the first Eurobond issue we did was in 2007 September. Aisha, when did we discover Jubilee oil?
That's
mid 2007.
Okay.
When we discovered Jubilee, 4 months later, we started going to Eurobond market. Now you can now check the timing of all our bond issues against oil production, oil discoveries, and agreements for plan of development. It can correlate all of them. The latest one, the very latest one, 3 billion, which is the largest amount we're going to take off the Eurobond market. We did it when? A couple of weeks ago. All right. Now, please, when did Aker Energy announce their Pecan oil field find, which is going to be the biggest oil field Ghana has, which now the incoming government is telling us that you could double our oil production.
Just a couple of months ago.
Just in February. Under 60 days, we're going to take the largest amount of Eurobonds this thing you ever see. What you need to go and check, Aisha, is check when we go on our road shows asking for Eurobonds money. We want to issue Eurobond. Go and check what's inside the documents we use to convince the investor. The bottom line is that, hey man, more oil fields, more money. Don't worry, you can pay because we're opening oil fields. That's just the big gamble, and both parties are doing it. Of course, they won't tell you that, but that is what is going on.
Okay.
That is just what is going on. Now, you see, when we say the foreign debt, you know, one of the figures being bandied most among both parties that argue each other is public debt to GDP.
Yeah.
Now, see how this thing works. What they are doing is they are calculating how much we owe as a proportion of the value of our economy. But we both know that is not how it works. If you go and borrow money from the bank now, you are working here. When you go and borrow money from the bank, what are you using to assess your ability to pay? Is it the value of all the property in your house?
No.
Or is it your salary?
Yeah.
It's your salary. What we should be doing is calculating our public debt against our revenues, our annual revenues. Politicians do
Unfortunately,
that.
that's not what's happening.
Yeah, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Another self-serving thing by the politicians, sorry to say, is because when you do that, you can't play games with the figures. Now watch this. Because we do what we call, there's something called rebasing of the economy. Yeah. When you use GDP, when you use public debt to GDP, all you have to do is every few years you rebase your economy, and that automatically, just by one overnight, the value of your economy goes up. Then your public debt to GDP ratio comes down, which now gives you space to go and borrow more. So now the vice president can sit down here and say that we have brought the public debt to GDP ratio down from 72% to 58%. Yeah. The reason why he's able to say that is simply because we rebased our economy last year.
Yeah. And so we had the opportunity to borrow more.
So
right now, our debt stands at 173 billion from 122 billion.
Yes. Now, if you calculate how much of our tax revenues are going on servicing our debt, you will find that almost half of Ghana's tax revenues going to servicing debt. Now, when we say servicing debt, we're not talking about paying off the principal. The debts are not coming, just interest. Just interest. But Ghana has never been able to pay debt. We simply borrow from Peter to pay Paul. When Paul's debt falls due, they go and borrow from Peter.
Yeah, but my point is, borrowing itself, I think, I'm not sure it's a bad thing to do as a government. Borrowing is not a bad thing.
Borrowing strategy, really.
Exactly, except if it's not being used for the intended purpose. My point is, are we even borrowing? What has been the trend? Are we borrowing too much, or is it that we are borrowing but we are not using it for what? Because I've heard people say we are borrowing to consume. Yeah. So if you borrow to consume, it means that you still come back to square one.
Very, very, very much so. You see, when I complain about our debt, so it's because we're not using all the money properly. Let me give you an example of a very good debt thing. When the Amama government borrowed 850 million for the Otwabo gas facility and the gas pipeline, nobody could argue with that. Yeah. That is what has turned our long-time trade deficit into a trade surplus. Okay. Because now we have gas. I mean, you heard the Vice President even saying recently that now we have enough domestic gas to fire up all our stations. Okay. That's good borrowing. Okay. Now, to be fair, a lot of our borrowing actually is along the lines of borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, is refinancing. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that, especially when you're able to borrow more cheaply and use it to refinance more expensive debt. That's debt at a higher interest rate. That one too is good. But a lot of the debt, we all know what it goes. I mean, if you are borrowing money to pay salaries, for example, that's rubbish. Yeah. You are borrowing money to run, sorry to say, free senior high school. You're asking for trouble. Yeah. And a lot of our debt, that's what it goes into. And even when you're borrowing to actually improve your revenues along the line, but there's a large gap between when you borrow the money and when that debt you have taken starts producing high revenues. The question is, how do you manage in between that period, that time lag? You have problems. And right now, Ghana is in that kind of situation where, I mean, look, let me try to explain how this thing works. Yeah. Remember, the Mahama administration always has boasted about the fact that they borrowed, because they really borrowed a lot. But they said that, we use it for good things. Yeah. This, that. Okay. But now check this out, Aisha. a government goes to borrow money for a water treatment facility, and you can say, oh, that is good borrowing. The water that is treated will be sold for profit. So eventually the debt will pay off. The debt will pay itself off, it's self-amortizing. But the thing is this: if you have not borrowed so much in the past before that it has tied down all your revenues, you wouldn't have needed to go and borrow for that water treatment facility in the first place. You would have taken it out of your tax revenues. Right now, anytime we now borrow for infrastructure, we say, oh, at least we're using it for capital expenditure, so it's good. But the fact is that I'm going to look around the world. How many countries have to rely entirely on borrowing for their capital expenditure? That's what we are paying taxes for. We pay taxes so that our taxes will build roads. So now when we pay taxes, what roads do our taxes do? You all know that any
if we still have to go for loans, come and build the road.
Because all our taxes are going on paying interest on the loans we took before. And to me, that's simply is debt or sustainability.
But one interesting thing that came up this week is the fundamentals analogy. And for me, economists always believe that the fundamentals must be strong, and it must correlate also with the living standards of the people. Maybe Toma will correct me if I'm wrong, but what happened, Dr. Bawumia had some explanation to give, because people had held him to his own words that if the fundamentals are weak, the depreciation of the cedi will give you out. And he says, no, I mean, it's logic. So he tries to explain that. Let's listen to Dr. Bawumia.
You will recall that I stated in 2014 that if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. That was true then. That was true then, and it is true now. It is 100% correct. So if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. But it is warped logic to jump from that to a conclusion that if there is depreciation in your currency, then the fundamentals must be weak. Do you understand the logic? It is very warped logic. If the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. But if the exchange rate moves, you cannot jump to that conclusion that the fundamentals are weak. That defies logic. That defies logic. There could be other external factors causing the exchange rate depreciation. The exchange rate depreciated by 31.3%. The fiscal deficit was 10.1% of GDP. The public debt rose to 70.2% of GDP. Inflation rose to 17%. And GDP growth had declined from 7.3% to 4%. In other words, the economic fundamentals had weakened significantly, and therefore the depreciation was easily explainable. It was not caused by dwarfs or high-rise buildings, as we were told. The exchange rate in 2014 had exposed the weak economic fundamentals.
Okay, so that was Vice President Dr. Bawumia explaining that, I mean, then when I said the fundamentals, when the fundamentals are weak, the cedi rate will expose you. It was true then and it's still true, except that I have a different explanation to what I said in 2014. Toma, maybe you can help us understand. I mean, what's your understanding of this fundamentals analogy?
My understanding is that he is very correct when he says that when the exchange rate is weak, when the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose. What he said in 2014. Why I disagree with him is his latest explanation. The fact is that
exactly. I also
cedi is depreciated now because the fundamentals are still weak. Not as bad as they were in 2014. But they're still bad enough that, I mean, they're still not good enough to support the city.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the rest is politics.
Kojo, did you get a drift? Because I'm more confused after listening to him.
Okay, so maybe I'll do two things. First of all, I'll walk us through his logic.
Okay.
Because let's be fair to him, the logic is sound.
Okay.
But then afterwards, I'll ask a simple question that will help us determine whether indeed that logic is well placed.
Okay.
So what he is saying is that, and he used an analogy of a broken leg. You can use other analogies.
Yeah.
So for example, if you say to somebody that, look, if you have a fever, your temperature will expose you.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that anybody who has a fever will have a temperature.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you meet somebody who has a temperature, that doesn't mean you should immediately assume that that person has a fever.
Yeah.
Okay. They may have a temperature for other reasons. So that is the point he's seeking to make.
Okay.
And logically, it is sound.
Yeah.
But the question is this: are our fundamentals weak now or not?
Yeah.
I think the simple way to judge it is what I said earlier. Since the dawn of time, the city has been doing this.
Yeah.
Has it started doing this under NPP? No. It's still going down.
Okay.
So you ask yourself this: are our fundamentals suddenly strong? If
Not
you
at
look
all.
through are they strong? The only thing they are able to show is that, yes, we are failing, but we are failing at a better rate than our predecessors.
Which is certainly
And as a citizen,
unacceptable.
that is an answer that should deeply upset you.
Yeah.
Your two kids go to school and they both fail. They can't move on to the next level. And then one of them says, oh,
justifying the failure.
He got 1/10, I got 2/10. Why should that give me any consolation? Why should I be in any way pleased about that? So what we must be asking when we look at the performance of our governments, we should be asking, is it the best you could do? Not, did you do better than your predecessor? Because look, the fact that you were voted into power means that we expected you to be better.
And you promised to be better.
Indeed. But the question is this the best you can do?
Yep.
As a citizen today that has voted for you to be in office, is this the best you can do for me? That's the only question they should be seeking to answer.
Exactly.
And so the logic, perhaps it is only a response to those who have been quoting his words back to him.
Of course.
So that if you want to quote his words back to him now, you know that logically you can't. Okay? But,
that was a smart one.
Yeah, but beyond that, there are still the citizens who need a certain explanation of where the economy is going. And the final thing I'll say is that this is where both parties really let me down this week. In spite of all that they said, whether there was truth or whether there was falsehood, in spite of everything that they said, the one thing I didn't get is what is the future of my economy? I didn't get that from MPP, I didn't get that from NDC. You see, I would have loved for them to say that, look, maybe this is our plan. We've seen that this is how the economy is going. These are the things that need to change. This is how long it will take. 2020 is coming. So you know what? We're going to need a bit more time to complete whatever needs to be done so that we get to the place where we know we can be. So look, in 1 year we'll do this. In 2 years we'll do this. In 3 years we'll do it. 5 years from now, this is where we'll be. 10 years from now, this is where we'll be. So please, give us the time to do it. For me, the NPP lost an opportunity to speak to Ghanaians who will have a choice next year to determine whether or not it's better for us to keep them there or it's better for us to replace them.
They lost that opportunity.
As for the NDC, they didn't even bother to tell us what they are capable of as a party if they are to be returned to power. All they did was they told us that these guys are bad. These guys are bad. If they are bad, what makes you the better alternative? We had none of that. So to be perfect, and by the end of it, the person who wants to be president, all he had was a remix of what Dr. Baumia had said before. That's all he had to offer Ghanaians. He paraphrased it based on his knowledge of public relations. For me, I watched them both and thought, none of these parties have given Ghana a path forward. So now when I don't know, I'm not sure how things are going to go.
I told you that inside them, when they are sitting among themselves, the whole game plan is simple. More oil fields. That's all. That's all. That is all it's about.
And bauxite. Now we have.
Okay, well, I'm
we have bauxite too coming.
Yes.
So yeah, that's it.
Yes,
that's the game.
That's what it's all about. But and that is what they go to tell the foreign investors when they're asking them to bring Eurobond money.
It's very interesting.
They don't tell us that, but I know what they go to tell them when they
if
go
you
out.
permit me, if you permit, just 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Look, this bauxite thing has just reminded me.
Yeah.
You know, Thomas had this analogy of if you are going to borrow money, what do you talk about? Is it the things you own or the salary you make?
Yeah.
So you see, if you put the things you own as, you know, our infrastructure and all that, those are the things that people are, want to use the money we are borrowing for. Want to buy more things, want to own more things, right? Because we know that that's what the voter will see and think, oh, you have done well.
Yeah.
Okay. At the same time, while we are doing this, we have to pay back these debts with our salary, our revenue. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the question is this. What's the difference between borrowing from the West and borrowing from the East, China? If you borrow from the West, and at some point you can't pay, well, the West, they already wrote into your contract which of your things they will come and take.
Assets.
And they tend to want our natural resources, you know. As for the East, if you can't pay, they'll come and clear the things that you have bought. So they'll come and own your ports.
Yeah.
Or they'll come and own your, you understand?
Yeah.
That's what they've done to other
built it for you.
countries. That's what they've done to other countries. So as a nation, we need to start looking at what exactly is each political party's debt strategy.
Yeah.
Who are they borrowing from? What are the terms under which they are borrowing? What is the collateral?
Yeah.
What is the collateral? We need to start asking that question very carefully. Can we afford to lose this collateral? And these things are already stated in the deal.
Yeah.
So why can't we see the deal?
I mean,
why can't they show
and that's exactly what Thomas said. I mean, it's just the politics of it and what they stand to gain as individuals or their personal interests. Because, of course, if it is all in the contracts, how do a politician just come back and tell me that, okay, this is a bad contract, this party this government goes, another one takes over and says that, okay, this is a bad contract, so we need to go and renegotiate it and all of that. So it's just the politics of it.
When the Mahama administration was struggling to pay the Eurobond we took in 2007, ex-President Kufuor was sitting somewhere enjoying and thinking about his foundation. Mahama went to the Eurobond market every year from 2013 to 2016. When all those monies are being paid, he's going to be somewhere else. Not his problem. Right now, the Akufo-Addo government is setting records in the volumes of Eurobonds we are taking. Some of them are 31 years. Even his children will be dead before the forgery. But somebody's going to have the problem.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have the problem.
Yeah.
I'm not even thinking about that now. You know, my concern is the cost of servicing those debts now is adding to the CDT depreciation, which we are feeling it right now.
The pinch now. Right. And one of the issues that came up this week is the issue of the black market and how it is controlled. How dangerous is this situation? And I mean, how is it also playing a role in this CD depreciation?
You mean the black market?
Yes.
Well, the thing is this, okay? When you have lapses in your formal market, you drive activity underground. And that's what has brought the black market in there. It is difficult to assess the black market because nobody can give anything beyond guesstimates or even the volume of transactions that goes on there. You know, so it's really difficult to assess. But definitely, it throws a lot of our policy making decisions in disarray because you are dealing with a very significant amount of things going on which you cannot calculate into your policy making.
Yeah,
so it definitely has a very serious effect.
It definitely has a very serious effect.
It's very difficult to quantify. But nobody will be able to quantify what proportion of foreign exchange transactions in Ghana are done on the black market rather than the official market.
Right, let me take a few of your comments on WhatsApp. I'll start with Abu Jamal from Tamale. He says the NDC has best knowledge and have Ghana at heart. Kojo, we stopped doom, so yet you guys don't want to acknowledge us. And I don't see how Kojo's name. Why are you a member of the MVP? And this one say, hi, good evening. I'm so much impressed with your analysis on both NPP and NDC press statements on the town hall meeting organized by the NPP. And this one says, Frimpong K says, a teacher in Chirpone, okay, he's a teacher in Chirpone, and says, I would like to have an interview with your highly okay, concerning the NHI. Okay, so maybe we can talk about this. This one says, please, we want Dr. Anyas to tell us if money was released for October stipends, since he always says our contract started from October. Okay, who are you? You didn't mention your name. I'm sure he's talking about the NAPCOP thing. And hello, please, I need the contact of the Gold Street editor. Okay, so I think I will find permission and then probably send it to you. Please let the authorities at NAPCO know we need our allowances. Okay. And Ibrahim from Tamale says, may God save us from these two parties, the NDC and the NPP. This one is coming from, you didn't add your name. It says, hi Aisha, my name is Chief Boateng. My submission is that you, the media houses, must employ qualified economists, carry out research, document, and let's compare the two governments and other civil society organizations effectively. One can only debate with counter facts. For now, okay. Advice well taken. And this one says, I'm one of the most viewers of JoyNews. Okay. It's a live show. Okay, so he wants to know the difference, whether it's a live show or it's repeat. But I think it's always there, whether it's live or repeat, it's always there. Okay, please don't get it wrong. The depreciation of the local currency is not necessarily bad. In fact, the depreciation of the cedi supports the government's promise of leading an export-led economy. With an inflation rate of 10%, if the local currency depreciates on an annual basis by less than 10%, exporters will lose real income value. Depreciation is a tool of economic adjustment. Yeah, we understand that, of course, depreciation has its own good sides, but in this situation, I really don't see how it will help us as a country. Please, Dr. Baumia said there are external factors that can cause the exchange rate. I want to know whether those factors were not in existence when he made the statement. If the economic fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. And my name is Abdul Karim from Kumasi. I've been working as NAPCO trainee. Okay, so this is another NAPCO conversation we need to have. This one is from Ralph from Takrady. He says, at this juncture of the life of Ghana, I think we should make all the political parties tributary to the main river. And the main river is the dictator. What they are doing is a version of Uncle Ebo White's play. Very interesting comments there. This last one is from Eric Lawson from Dambai. He says, with all this populist presentation from the vice president, the cost of cement fuel still hasn't changed. 2020 will be really interesting. And of course, we also had some announcement or some reduction in benchmark values this week. Let's listen to the vice president when he announced that.
GDP growth remained robust in 2018, almost double the average in sub-Saharan Africa. The total public debt has increased from 122 billion in 2016 to 173 billion, including the cost of the banking sector cleanup at the end of 2018. However, the strong fiscal adjustment and better debt management has meant that the rate of debt accumulation, which is at 12%, excluding the banking sector cleanup, the rate of debt accumulation is at its lowest in the last decade. Inflation has dropped steadily from the high of 15.4% at the end of 2016 to 9% at the end of January 2019. This is the lowest we have seen in the last 6 years. In 2014, the exchange rate depreciated by 31.3%. The fiscal deficit was 10.1% of GDP. The public debt rose to 70.2% of GDP. Inflation rose to 17%, and GDP growth had declined. from 7.3% to 4%. In other words, the economic fundamentals had weakened significantly, and therefore the depreciation was easily explainable. The data on the annual rate of depreciation of the cedi in recent years shows that the worst performance so far under the MPP government, the 8.4% depreciation that we saw in 2018, that worst performance is better than the best performance under the previous government between 2012 and 2016. So our worst is better than your best. And then you say boot for boot. This one is more like boot for Chalewote.
Welcome back. And so this week we've had 50% for other goods and 30% for vehicles. Now there's been some confusion about this whole benchmark things. People think that it has to do with import duties. I listened to the AGI president who was trying to explain and say that no, don't jubilate yet because it's not really what you think. Maybe Toma will help us understand what the benchmark is, and then Kojo will bring us on what exactly the reality at the port, because he's been there this week.
Okay. Now, for most types of goods, okay, customs operate what they call the benchmark value based on this. You bring in your goods under the normal system. You are bringing your goods. It's a system of self-declaration. You bring in the goods. You know how much. You know the value of the goods better than anybody else. So you now say, okay, this is the value of the goods I'm bringing in. Customs will not apply the set customs.
You're going back to the system. I need to claim a refund because.
So, but the thing is this. I mean, in this part of the world, we all know that people try to under-declare the value of their goods so that they can reduce the amount of duties they will have to pay. So customs has what they call the benchmark for each type of good. If you now come and your figures, the value, let's say you bring in a car, all right, and the value you declare is significantly lower than the benchmark value set by customs. Customs will say, hey, look, we're trying to cheat, and will not accept your value. So we're applying our benchmark value. Okay. All right. So it's not the import duties. Don't get your import duties are now fixed. You are part of the common external tariff of ECOWAS. Yeah. The tariffs have been set across all ECOWAS members for tariffs for goods coming from outside ECOWAS. And for inside ECOWAS, there's supposed to be duty free anyway under the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme. So you can't actually double your tariff rate. But now the idea is that if your benchmark values are reduced, then automatically, even though the tariff rate does not change, the amount you'll be paying would also reduce in consonance with the reduction of the benchmark value. Because what it means is that effectively what you are bringing in, the valuation of what you are bringing in has been halved. Okay.
Wow. But the listening to the AGI president, Sechuma Kwabwa, I didn't get that sense because he said that it may not even make any significant impact. Let's listen to Sechuma Kwabwa.
My understanding of it is a bit different though. I mean, that would have been a big, serious challenge for industry if you give a blanket 50% reduction in import duty. But I don't think that is what the vice president said. What he said was that the benchmark values will be reduced by 50%. Now, the benchmark value only comes in when there is no clarity and there is uncertainty about the values you are declaring. So if you are declaring a certain value and it's consistent with what the customs expect, then they leave it there and you pay the appropriate duty. So it's not a reduction in duty. It is only when your declaration is not consistent with what the customs have, and then they say that you are going to use a certain benchmark. So that benchmark, your values cannot be below that. Any value above it is fine, but below that, they will not accept it. That's what the benchmark value does. So in some instances, there may not be any reduction at all. And in fact, most of the goods we import, if it's consistent and they're declaring the right values, they shouldn't be attacked, they shouldn't be touched at all.
So what it is that there'll be some goods that you import that the 50% reduction will not apply.
Oh yes, in fact, in most of them it shouldn't even apply, because in most cases you declare your values, and if you are truly declaring the right values, the benchmark values doesn't come in at all. So you pay the right duty. It is only when there's uncertainty, the customs are not clear, that the values you have declared is not consistent with what they think the value should be, then they apply the benchmark values.
Okay, so you expect, what is the AGI's own approach going to be in getting clarity on this going forward?
Well, we will talk to customs. We are always engaging them. So we have to have a clarity on this. But our understanding of it is that it is a benchmark value they are talking about, not a total reduction in the duty rate. As far as we are concerned, if people are really declaring the right values, it has no effect. So really, it doesn't really add much.
So Setrum Akwabwa, they're explaining how it works, but to see things for ourselves, Kojo went to the port this week and he had some insight, Kojo. So what's the reality on the ground?
Well, first of all, the way that this reduction applies is a bit different to goods from how it applies to vehicles.
Okay.
I'll get into that in a minute, but the first thing I wanted to say was that I noticed Mr. Setrum Akwabwa was suggesting that over 90% of goods don't have benchmark, but that is not accurate. In fact, what we've learned so far indicates that majority of goods have benchmark values. And Thomas explained beautifully how it works. When you come in, they can't. So you bought a TV from China, you say it's $100.
Yeah.
You bought a TV from Germany, you say it's $150. Customs has to have a way of regularizing how much people should pay for that sort of TV.
Okay.
So they have a benchmark figure so that people can't under-declare or over-declare to their benefit. So any item that has a benchmark figure in customs system, that benchmark figure has now been reduced by 50%.
Okay.
And that does apply to majority of items that come through the ports. There will be exceptions. For example, you are buying something which is manufactured in only one place in the world and the price is known, there's no need, there's no confusion. So you come, they look on your invoice, if that's the price, then there's no benchmark issue. There'll be other exceptions, perhaps things that are coming in for the first time ever. It is now that customs will have to then figure out what the benchmark figure should be, and so forth. So there will be exceptions, but generally, everything that comes in, things that are coming in on a weekly basis for our consumption, customs are used to them. They have already got a benchmark figure in their system, and so when you come, it is that figure that should be used to calculate you.
Well, one of the explanation I had was that the benchmark calculation is actually the last on all the calculations they have. I don't have the law here, but it says that the benchmark calculation is actually the last. So sometimes you don't even have to go for the benchmark value unless the customs, it's optional.
That is not the reality I saw when I went to the ports. Now, I saw a number of what they call CCVRs. That's sort of like your the statement that the customs prints to you to tell you what you owe in order to clear your goods.
I think it's called Customs Claim
Valuation Report. That's what it is. Yeah. So I saw a number of them, and particularly for vehicles. And that's why I said there's a bit of a difference between how it applies to vehicles and how it applies to
other
goods. So for goods, it's 50%. It's calculated on the benchmark. So if your item has a benchmark figure, then that figure is what will be used to calculate.
So it's not every item that has a benchmark figure.
But like I explained, majority of items do have. So for cars, it's different. Virtually every car will get the 30% discount. Because you see, the way cars duty is calculated on cars is that they use something called the HDV, the home delivery value. So they calculate your import duty based on the home delivery value.
Okay.
So you've bought a car from the US. You say, oh, I bought this car for $1,000. They will look at the home delivery value of the car in order to calculate your duty. Because perhaps your car is a Rolls Royce, but it was a gift. Somebody gave it to you for $1. You still have to pay duty.
Yep.
So it is the HDV, the home delivery value, that they will use to calculate how much your duty should be, not the amount that you spent on the vehicle. So literally every car will benefit, because the way they calculate it from the CCVRs that I saw is that if the HDV for your car is $1,000, they first deduct the 30%. That's the first deduction.
Okay.
So that now they are going to calculate your duty on $700 because they've taken 30% off. Then they look at the depreciation. Now, as you know, if your car is 5 years old, you get 50% depreciation.
Okay.
So let's say this is a 5-year-old car that you are bringing in. Immediately, your $700 is cut to $350. It is now that they are going to calculate the duty.
Okay.
And then, of course, they will take into consideration the size of your engine. That all of that comes into how they calculate it. So it is that $350 that they will calculate it on. So they first remove the 30%. When you look at how they've itemized it, that's how it works.
Okay.
And I saw that on several CCVRs, so I know that is how it is being done.
Done.
So there is, it is a reality. When you are importing a car now, you will get a 30% discount on the duty you have to pay.
Okay.
And if you are importing any goods, then it will be a 30% on the benchmark value. So if the good has a benchmark value, you get 50% discount.
But again, the NDC is casting doubts, and they are connecting this to the Abosokai announcement. And if you heard Atofo saying, he said this is another prank and that people shouldn't be happy about it. So you went there. I mean, how was it? Were people enjoying it?
Yes, I went there on the very first day. So the first CCVRs had come out by sort of midday, 1 o'clock. And I saw a number of them. And the calculations have been applied exactly as advertised. And that's the other thing, you see, because the criticism that we saw, it suggested that, oh, the vice president has lied. Okay, he says there's a reduction in import duty, but actually it's on the benchmark value. So he has deceived us. But no, if you look at his speech, he said benchmark values.
Yeah,
he said that those were his words. He said the benchmark values.
So
there was no
I mean,
deception.
well, people who did not actually understand. Again, this is technical, so you can understand when people really are saying it's duties instead of benchmark. So yeah, I can understand that. But this is supposed to improve revenue. How significant is this?
Well, it will actually reduce revenue per item coming in. But government's calculation is that it will increase revenues ultimately, because so much more will come in. You see, they did the maths and found out that we've lost a lot of market share to Lome and Abidjan in particular. But when they did their calculation, they found out that it's more expensive bringing goods through Tema than every other port on all the other ports on the west coast except Nigeria. It's only Nigeria that has more charge. You will notice that apart from this 50% reduction in the benchmark thing, they've also cut a lot of port charges. All right. So the idea is we will get less on each goods, but there will be so much more goods coming in, because we are going to win back market share from our competitors. And you remember that both Tema and Takoradi ports are going through some massive expansion. By the time you finish Tema's $1.5 billion expansion, expectedly by the end of this year, the capacity of Tema port will be 3 times what it was when that rehabilitation project, the expansion project started. Okay, so which means that, and Takoradi is also doing a lot, especially because of oil and gas. All right, so the idea is that we're going to have a lot more capacity. We can take in a lot more cargo throughput than before. I want to make use of that new capacity by bringing in, if possible, 3 times as much goods. Some of it, of course, going to the landlocked countries up in the north. All right. Now here are the calculations, and well, let's see how it goes. We also calculate that local producers. Don't forget that even though we talk about imported finished goods, about 70% of our imports actually are raw materials, industrial inputs. The calculation is that if you slash benchmark values and make it cheaper to bring in things, local producers will become more competitive against finished goods.
Okay.
Because their production costs will go down, right? So the government is hoping that now local manufacturers will be more cost competitive because the cost of clearing the imported inputs will be lower, and they will be able to increase their production capacities.
Yeah.
And the actual output. All right. So they are calculating that that's what will happen. So all said and done, and when you add that again to, corporate taxes, income taxes, which those people will pay, being able to employ more people who also pay as you and everything. Ultimately, government is hoping that will actually make more revenue than they were making before, when they were making wider margins on each product coming in, but the number of the volume of products was relatively small.
Okay.
Actually shrinking by the year.
Okay, so but I just want us to come back to the better management of the economy analysis that the Vice President made, and he says that he doesn't even want the NDC to do a boot for boot analysis. He would prefer a boot for Chaluwete analysis. But I mean, from where you said Toma, how do you compare the two? Would you say boot for Chaluwete, or barefoot?
First of all, I completely agree with what Kojo said, that comparing the two parties themselves is deficient in terms of the fact that if one has got 10 over 100 and one has got 20 over 100, why should we satisfy and now say, oh, because somebody got 20 over 100 and he did better than the other one, then we should accept a 20 over 100 performance.
Yeah, I
totally agree with Kojo about that. But well, since we are stuck between these two guys, are you asking me who's done better? Is that what you're asking me?
Who are better managers of the economy?
This is difficult. You see, Aisha, you're putting me on the spot. I have my idea, but as I said, look, 80% of Ghanaians are fixated on who they believe is better. So if I tell you what I think right now, I'm automatically alienating 40% of Ghanaians, which is why I'm not going to answer your question. not in public.
Okay.
I've told you in private.
Yeah, you have.
I'm not going to say it in public.
I agree. I agree with you, and of course, we all agree.
I think the figure, when it comes to macroeconomic fundamentals, if you are judging using macroeconomic fundamentals, you cannot disagree with the Vice President. The fundamentals have improved.
Okay. But it's still weak.
Now, how those fundamentals translate into living standards could be a different matter altogether. There are so many other things that you have to consider. For example, you have to consider income disparity. What proportion of the economy of the populace are benefiting from those improved fundamentals? That's another issue altogether. So it's a very complex thing to really look at. When it comes to the macroeconomic fundamentals, the fact that Dr. Omia said the truth, the fundamentals have improved as far as the statistics go.
Okay.
What the data goes.
So I mean, we've been talking about all the terms, capital expenditure, we're talking about inflation, GDP, and all of that. But for us, the ordinary Ghanaian, what I want to see is whether the fundamentals are weak or strong, and whether they are weak or strong, how does that reflect into jobs? How does that reflect into our pockets? How does that reflect into a booming business environment?
Exactly. Improving macroeconomic fundamentals, faster economic growth, eventually will have benefits at the micro level.
Okay.
But there's what we call a transmission lag between when the fundamentals improve and when it gets to your pocket. Let's look. Let's just do a simple example. You reduce benchmark values by 50%. People have started enjoying the benefits already.
Okay.
But let's even assume that the people who are importing these things are going to pass on the benefits to consumers, which is an assumption you cannot be sure of. They might just decide to increase their profit margins. But let's even assume that they are going to pass the thing on. You won't start benefiting now, because somebody's bringing the thing. It's going to some warehouse. From there, it's going to look for wholesale buyers. Then the wholesaler is going to come and buy the stuff.
So you make the point that the fundamentals have improved. How much or how much more do we have to wait and see the thing translating into our pockets, because we've been patient enough?
Oh, I think with the way things are going now, within the next 2 years, I would say. I know the government...
You have to wait for another 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Because the fundamentals are still really bad. When Dr. Baumia said that the fundamentals are improving, I say yes, I agree.
Okay.
When he said the fundamentals are strong, I totally disagree.
Okay.
I still stand where he said in 2014, if the fundamentals were strong, even this brief depreciation of the city would not have happened.
But the most recent, it appreciated a little, and then the following week, that was in March, the following week, it started running like someone was chasing it. And then people started talking about the money that the finance minister talked about, that should be pumped in, the cocoa money, the Eurobond money, and all of that. People said that it was not sustainable. And again, it may be political, but I think that it had some essence.
You see, when I talk about the speculator thing, see, it doesn't have to be sustainable as long as you can reverse the trend. Once, if your city starts appreciating now, even for 2 months, people will start taking money. They will say, now the cities are appreciating stronger than the dollar. What do you do? So you start changing your dollars into cities, which now makes the appreciation even faster.
Okay.
So you have an entire run of appreciating
But what
cities.
caused that sharp decline again? The CD's decline, because it appreciated for a week, and then the next week it started declining again, and we don't know where we are
Pure
now.
speculation. People hear that money is coming in, right? For example, people hear that some new money is going to come in. Maybe the Ministry of Finance and the Bank of Ghana have topped up the city and say, oh look, some money is going to come in, things are going to change right now. Then people now convert dollar to CD. Then maybe a week later, we now hear that even that Eurobond money, for example, when the government granted this latest Eurobond, they said that if they don't get the rate they want, they won't take it for now. Instead, they'll go and take 750 million bridging loan from 2 international banks and manage with that. People now hear that 3 million won't come, that 3 billion won't come now because government didn't get the right rate. Those inflows we have been expecting are not going to come. It's like, that means the city is going to fall. That means the city is going to fall again. Guys quickly turn around and change back. So it is market volatility. This market intervention we talk about the Bank of Ghana, Mr. Dongo was saying that they took out 700 million and Bamia said they didn't take anything and that. Look, it is normal practice for market intervention. And market intervention works both ways. The idea, the principle of market intervention is not about just training dollars to defend the city. It's about smoothing out the volatility you are just referring to now. Sometimes the Bank of Ghana goes and buys up dollars if the city is appreciating, for example, and the appreciation is very sharp. They will go, they will pump in dollars and take out, they will throw in and take out dollars to smoothen the volatility and make sure at least that during this period where they could actually buy out dollars, they now have another stash of dollars, so the next time this is depreciating, they can use the same dollars to prop it up rather than go back to our foreign reserves. So when you have a situation, the situation we have now is what they call extreme volatility. Basically, it is information people are getting about how much, whether foreign exchange will be available over the coming days or not. That is what really pushes people.
That's what really pushes people. But the good news is that we've exited the IMF this month, but the fear has been the fact that because we do not have what it takes to be on our own or to do the right things or to put our house in order, we may end up running back to the IMF.
Now, you see, this issue is one of the things that has been achieved with the city behind the city depreciation thing. It actually goes a bit further than what you're saying, Aisha. The basis that you see the investment community, of course, they're worried that do we have the fiscal discipline to stay disciplined without the IMF looking over our shoulder, and it goes beyond that in terms of the fact that the government itself does not agree with the IMF's basic principles of how to turn the economy around. Remember the Akufo-Addo government has always said we'll move from taxation to production. Okay. What they actually mean in economics is they are going to move from demand management to supply management. Let me just explain this very carefully. We went to the IMF because we had a situation where generally the demand for goods and services in Ghana was more than the supply.
Yeah.
So the IMF now told us, we now brought in a program to reduce our demand for what we were producing.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's how we now come. That's why we are normally associate IMF with austerity measures.
Okay.
All right? That means you have to eat less because you don't have money. The Akufo-Addo government, right from the time we were campaigning before the 2016 election, said that our approach is different too. We don't believe that we have to cut our demand. Our approach is that we should find ways to boost our supply. Yeah. So instead of cutting demand to meet the lower supply, they want to boost supply to meet the higher demand, because that will create jobs and create wealth. I mean, there'll be more production and all that. That is their philosophy.
Okay.
And indeed, they've been in a hurry to get the IMF out of town. You know, even the 1 year expansion, the IMF had to virtually blackmail this government into accepting it, because this government had said no. Look, whether the Mahama administration missed targets in 2016 or not, just go. 3 years and go. And the IMF had to subtly tell them, look, we'll go. We can't force you to accept us, but when we go, we'll now have a very good thing to tell the international community about where Ghana is at this stage. I mean, government had to look at it again and say, look, we need the foreigners. If the IMF tells them that stay away from Ghana because Ghana is not behaving well, we'll have trouble. So they now say, okay, we'll come stay for the 1 year.
Okay.
Which is now up. Now, the thing is that the government has already shown that what they have said they want to do, like that is boosting supply to meet demand rather than reducing demand, they've actually started implementing it. The 2019 budget is the first time since the IMF program started they were actually, from the budget itself, targeted an increase in the fiscal deficit rather than a reduction. Okay. All we have been trying to do since 2015 is reduce our fiscal deficit, reduce our 2%. Sometimes we don't meet the target, we try to bring it down. In 2016 it was a total slippage and it was almost twice the target, but we still keep trying to bring it down. But based on the rebasing of the economy, in 2018 the target for the fiscal deficit was about 3.8 or 3.9%. That is when you take the rebasing into consideration. Okay. For 2019 it is 4.2, which means that in fact what we are doing this year is not fiscal consolidation, it's fiscal expansion. Okay. So now some people are saying, now see Ghana, the IMF is going on already, they've gone into, they are moving from fiscal consolidation into fiscal expansion. It's dangerous. Added to that again is the fact that, you know, Ghana's record in election years is not very good.
I was coming to that.
That was a major thing. Look, Renaissance Capital, this is an investment bank, they have a subsidiary here. The head office is in Moscow. They're a global major investment bank. They actually sent notes to their investor clients in the run-up to our issuing the latest Euro bonds that they should be careful with Ghana, because Ghana has, quote and unquote, a terrible fiscal record in election years. And next year is an election year. And already you have a government which is now reverting back to fiscal expansion rather than fiscal consolidation. Basic idea is at this time, don't touch Ghana. That was why you've heard about all this KK party, that they said they were doing. The fact was that the government was so happy that they were able to raise what they were able to raise at those rates, because to be honest, they didn't expect it. Okay. They thought there were too many headwinds facing them. So they weren't expecting to be so successful.
And after the celebration, what next?
Well, they've got what they've wanted. I think they've been able to explain to foreign investors that it's not quite the way Ghana is being portrayed. I mean, for example, you know, it's better to have a target of 4.2% and meet it than to set a target of 3%, which is a better target when you end up doing 6%. Yeah. So I think they've been able to convince the foreign investors that yes, we've set an expansionary target, but the fact is that we make sure we meet our target. When we are revenue shortfalls, we cut our expenditure to meet, to compensate for those shortfalls. And I think it's taking people along. But that is a big worry going forward. The international community is going to be watching Ghana very, very, very keenly. And if we make mistakes, we'll have a lot of problems. Now we talk about the 5% fiscal rule and stuff, but I mean, let's be honest, the foreigners are not daft. As I was asking one MP, or when just before the town hall meeting, you say that you will sanction the finance minister if he goes above 5% fiscal deficit. You MPP MP, are you going to vote on the floor of parliament to sanction your party member?
It will never happen.
When he has gone to 7% in order to have more money for you to campaign to win the 2020 election, including you retaining your seat in your constituency.
Even the whip will whip him. It will be whipped in line.
They know it won't happen.
Yes,
so that thing is just, it's more a matter of, you know, an announcement or commitment that anything that's going to, that would have practical value if the government decides that they're going to ignore it for political reasons in the election year.
Well, interesting times ahead, but the energy minister, I mean, they've been talking energy. The vice president himself talked about energy. Mr. Amewu, the energy minister, also explained to us why we are not having our power, you know, on, and that we're having intermittent cuts. And of course, the ASEP just recently told the energy ministry and told the PDS that they should announce a load shedding timetable, because I mean there are indications that we may go back to darkness, because the explanation was that the signals they're picking is that of what led us into, in the NDC administration, that what led us into darkness. And so they should just admit and let us all face the problems. So on Friday, we had the PDS announcing a timetable, but a few hours later, they called it off and say there's improved supply. We've also been hearing of the former Deputy Power Minister, John Jinapo, saying that a lot of the things that Dr. Baumia and Mr. Amewu are saying is just totally lies, and that the problem we're having is actually financial and not any technical hitch. After listening to the two, Kojo, do you have any hope that we're going back to, we'll never go back to the days of darkness?
Well, just before I answer that, a quick clarification on the performance of the city. You were asking about its recent performance following, you know, when we went for the Eurobond, it gained value.
And then it dipped
what
again.
You're saying is that it's dipping again. The reality is that, yes, following the Eurobond, it started to gain value from its worst, which was something like 5.88, almost 5.9. It gained value all the way down to something like 5.1, 5.0. In fact, there was even a day when it reported 4.9 on some exchanges. Yes. It did then start to lose value again, but not as rapidly
as it was.
Yeah. So it went up to something like 5.4, 5.5. Around the end of March, maybe 27th, 28th of March. Stayed there for a few days, and since then has actually been gaining value.
Yeah.
So at the moment, it's somewhere around, in fact, I'm using Bloomberg, which is the one that was quoted by the NDC. It is today at 5.19.
Okay.
So it's been gaining value since then. So yeah, it's not stable, and that's really what businesses need. They need stability.
Yeah.
It's not stable, but in terms of its value, it is gaining value, especially over the past few days. I just wanted to put that out there. Now, power. Maybe this government is the most unfortunate government in the world. Maybe that's the message they want to give us. That a series of unfortunate events have led them to a situation which is not doomsday. It's not doomsday.
No.
It's just misfortune. You know, so first it was some lines from the west that touched or something, and then something went.
And then the pylons.
Then they had this difficulty with some road construction. Yes.
Yeah, the
road construction.
Yes.
And then even though the road construction is supposed to affect only a certain part of the country, all of a sudden Tamale was having them. So quickly they then realized that it was prepared to Tamale. There was another touching of wires there. And that also caused some problems. Oh, and then even though the Tamale thing was happening, there was still Doomsaw in Accra. So, it appears that some people sabotaged some pylons. and then indeed. So you see, it seems as if
we need to wrap up.
Yeah, there was a series of unfortunate events that were all wrapped up under technical issues, but
followed by a tying of the gas from the west to the east, which suddenly they had forgotten. You know, they had forgotten that thing had been scheduled.
I saved that for last. I saved that for last because that can never be described as an unfortunate event.
Yeah.
So you see, all of these things were given to us as reasons why the lights were going off. And then all of a sudden, we heard that PDS2 has to do some maintenance. Scheduled maintenance. So in the midst of all this, then they had a press conference to tell us that we need to connect gas, and that will take a while. So you see, it appears as if what the government wants Ghanaians to believe is that the management of our power is not in their hands, and that things just happen to them. Yeah. They are doing their best
they just
to react.
Sleep, wake up, and
but
then...
the trouble did not happen to them. The movement of car power, it didn't happen to them. It is part of a plan.
Yeah.
So now, when we finally heard that there was going to be a schedule, for some, it seemed that, and politics is being played with it by all sides. Everything. So as for the opposition, they just want to hear the word doomsaw so they can say, we are the same, we are the same.
But do we have a financial challenge?
I don't know.
Is our problem actually financial or technical?
I don't know.
Even technical problems are financial.
I would prefer to be charitable to government and believe them, even though it's becoming increasingly difficult, as Kofi has pointed out. However, where my charity ran out was when they now said they were going to do a load shedding thing. I mean, now when you have a technical problem, then you can now come with a load shedding schedule based on the nature and scope of that technical problem. When you now cancel the technical problem, say you won't have load shedding again, what it tells me is that because the government has seen the bad politics that's coming out of the thing, the financial crisis that caused the whole bloody thing in the first place, government has voted money to solve it.
Exactly.
That's how I see it.
That's how I see it. But I'm just hopeful that this will be the end to the intermittent cuts, because if you listen to John Pierre Amewu, he was like, okay, so that we'll be resolving the issue, and we've already been told that we have just 12 days to go for the Ghana gas thing to be fixed. So after this 12 days, if I still get power cuts, then I should be very angry. Well, I should be very, very angry. And I think that's where time will allow us.
When you have a situation where VRA continuously owes Ghana gas, apart from Gas, Nigerian gas, the one they've been owing for a long time, even Ghana gas is always being owed by VRA. Of course you're going to have problems. You're moving to gas and you can't pay for the gas. You have power outages.
You will have power outages.
And if you increase the amount of resources going into paying Ghana gas.
We'll be watching. We'll be watching keenly.
Is now not going to.
We'll be monitoring the activities of
where did they get the extra
John Peter Amewu and the Energy Ministry, because Ghanaians have been very patient, and I don't think that going back to darkness is anything that any of us would want to see. Many thanks for watching. Kojo Yansing is Anchor Joy News, and Toma Amihir is editor, Gold Street Business newspaper. Many thanks, gentlemen, for coming, and you at home, thanks so much for watching.